What's up, guys? Jesse here from Matt Apps, and today we are going to talk about the UFC 261 cards. So let's look at this right here. So obviously this is the three title fight card. We've got Usman versus Masvidal for the 170 title, rematch of a pretty one-sided fight, although Masvidal was on 1 week's notice at the time, so there is some justification for a rematch, even though it was kind of a blowout. Then we've got the Weili Zhang versus Rose Namajunas fight, which I am really hyped for because I think both these girls, in my opinion, like obviously these women's divisions, a lot of them are very new. A lot of them don't have much history, so pretty much winning the title in and of itself guarantees you a top five pound for pound or top five all time in your weight class. But because of that, all these girls divisions tend to be a lot more interesting because they're so new. So much is on the line, and even though eventually they'll be knocked out of the all-time rankings, or some of them will, for right now, this does put them in the all-time rankings. So it's very interesting to watch and to enjoy it while it is here. And then again, another female fight, Shevchenko versus Andrade at 125. So the former 115-pound champion moving up. So yeah, this is really interesting. All four of these girls are former or current champions, and Usman, obviously, in my opinion, right now, I would put him as the number 4 welterweight of all time. I think GSP is obviously number 1. Matt Hughes is the obvious number 2, and Pat Miletich is number 3, but I put Usman right behind that. And if Usman can win this fight, then he would tie Pat Miletich for the amount of title defenses that they have, which would put them at both at 4 defenses, 5 wins total if you include their initial win of the title. So for me, this is the fight that if Usman wins this fight, this puts him as the number 3. This will allow him to tie or pass Pat Miletich and become the number 3 welterweight of all time. So yeah, let's break these down. So first of all, we've got Weili versus Namajunas. We'll start at the lighter of the fights. Obviously, a lot on the line here. The title for one. Namajunas has kind of pulled the political angle in onto this, being Lithuanian. She's obviously very anti-communist. Weili obviously fights for a communist state, although because the nature of those states, you can't really tell what her political opinions are. But Namajunas has done a really good job of basically advertising this as like a modern version of America versus the USSR. She's really leaned into that. It's USA versus the Chinese Communist regime, the CCP, and she's even pulled a lot of Europe into that, talking about her Lithuanian heritage. So in many ways, she's made this like the West versus China, or NATO versus China, or US versus China. Like, she's really pulled a lot of geopolitical angles in a weird way into this fight, which may help boost her popularity, especially if she's able to win this fight. I think if she's able to win this fight and get like a USA chant going, say something really important or really resonant politically, especially being in Florida, which is a conservative state, I think that would be huge for her career. The way I look at this fight, the one who wins this becomes the number 5 pound for pound girl of all time. Right now, obviously, both these girls have 1 win and 1 title defense. So this would be their 3rd title win. Right now, the way I look at it, you've got, obviously, at number 1, I think Amanda Nunes is the clear number 1. You go down to number 2, and I'd say number 1 is Amanda Nunes. Number 2, I'd probably give to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Number 3 would be Ronda Rousey, and number 4 would be Shevchenko. At least that's how I look at it. I think the winner of this Weili versus Namajunas fight, that solidifies them as that number 5. That'll be that top 5 female pound for pound all time, at least for now. Obviously, again, all these female divisions are very young. A lot of these records are going to be broken. It wasn't too long ago that Rousey was the top female, Cyborg at some point. Some people still think Cyborg, although I guess that depends if you talk UFC or MMA. Obviously, Cyborg's UFC career was not nearly as illustrious as her MMA career as a whole. So if you're talking strictly UFC, I wouldn't really put Cyborg in the top position. I definitely put her in like the top 10, but not the top 5. But if you are including all MMA, then definitely Cyborg's also up there. But as far as like top 5 UFC, I think this Weili versus Namajunas fight that is basically what's on the line is who is the number 5 pound for pound woman of all time, and then obviously from there they can start winning more title fights. Both of them, I think Weili has already challenged Shevchenko, so possible that she moves up, which would be another big fight for her. Namajunas could obviously fight Andrade again because she lost to Andrade. So there's a lot of fights to make, no matter who wins and who loses. And I think, for both of them, that puts a lot of it's a big fight. It's a big fight for both their legacy. But all in all, I think I'm going to go with Weili. I think Weili is going to beat her. She seems to be the more well-rounded fighter. Namajunas is good, but she's also a little reckless, and at times she seems like she doesn't really have a game plan. She's just kind of got a very well-rounded skill set and just kind of goes out there and fights, whereas from what I've seen of Weili, she tends to have a much more game plan oriented approach to the fight. So she goes out there and she will take girls down, she will box them up, she will clinch them up, and a lot of that depends on what that girl's good at. So she's also well-rounded, but she tends to game plan a lot better. So I think Weili is gonna most likely be the winner of that fight. So Shevchenko Andrade, obviously another big fight. Shevchenko's still the champion. Andrade, former 115 pound champion. She's moving up to fight Shevchenko. I think she's had one fight before this at 125 pounds. I view this a lot in the same way that I view the Weili versus Namajunas fight. Although Andrade is obviously a very, very explosive athlete. Probably one of the more athletic girls in the entire UFC. She's got a lot of power. She can definitely, she's one of the few girls, especially like at 115, she's one of the few girls that has that punching power where she can really fuck girls up with like 1 or 2 punches. So that is always a thing. But that being said, like Shevchenko is just so crisp in the striking. She comes from that Muay Thai background, that kickboxing background. I think she's like a 13-time world kickboxing champion or something. Like she's won kickboxing world titles since she was a teenager, right? She's been competing at a very, very high level of kickboxing. She beat Ioana Jędrzejczyk, I think 3 times in kickboxing and then twice in MMA, or once in MMA maybe. But Shevchenko is probably from a technical perspective, she definitely doesn't have the power of an Amanda Nunes, but from a technical perspective, she's, I would say, easily the best striker in women's MMA. So, does Andrade have a chance? I'd say yes, especially with the amount of power she has. She's, but then again, she's also moving up 10 pounds, so it's gonna it'll be interesting to see how well that power translates, because a lot of the time, it really depends on how much of that power comes from her speed, right? Because power is just mass times acceleration. So if she can keep that acceleration and keep that speed and keep that explosiveness, then she'll have a lot of power, maybe even more than 115. But if she slows down too much, she won't be able to carry that power as well. So that'll be interesting to see. But all in all, I'm gonna have to go with Shevchenko. Andrade has a puncher's chance, but that's about all I see her having. I think Shevchenko is just going to pick her apart, either get the unanimous decision or a late round finish. And then, so the last fight, the main event, Usman versus Masvidal, Kamaru versus Jorge. So obviously for Usman, this is a huge fight. Well, I think for both guys, this is a big fight. Obviously, Masvidal is his first shot at the title, or not first shot at the title, but his shot to win his first title fight. Usman, in my opinion, this is the fight that if he wins, he ties Pat Miletich for those 4 UFC title wins, the 4 defenses plus the initial title win. So I think that would move him up to the top 3 welterweights of all time, just behind St. Pierre and Hughes. So for both guys, a lot on the line, honestly. I think Usman, it really solidifies his legacy as one of the greatest welterweights of all time, moves him another notch up that ranking. And for Masvidal, in order to start working your way up those rankings, you obviously have to win a title. So I think, for Masvidal, this is obviously a huge fight as well. That being said, I don't really see much going too differently from the first fight. Masvidal is very popular, but he's always been kind of a journeyman, right? Like, this is a guy that's been in the UFC since his mid-20s. He's been a top-level guy. He fought in Bellator 1. He's been a top-level guy for a long time. People think that because he's so young, or relatively young, that he's, the new kid on the block, but he's been around for a long time. And not to say that he hasn't improved. He's definitely improved a lot, especially over the last couple of years. I'd say his biggest leap was probably 3 or 4 years ago, where he really took a couple of big steps and went from being one of those guys who floated around the top, I'd say 20 to 15, to like floating around the top 5. But that being said, I still don't think his wrestling, I don't think, is good enough to deal with Usman. And I think that's the big thing, is he is one of those guys who is always going to have problems dealing with wrestlers. And I think a lot of that comes from his mentality. There's a lot of these guys that they will always have a problem in mixed martial arts because they view wrestling as the pussy way of fighting. And that's all great when you stand there and you're talking shit for the fans, but getting them all hyped up. But when reality comes and Usman double legs you, wrestling ain't such a fucking joke anymore. And that's the problem with a lot of these guys that are so anti-wrestling, is that they literally refuse to wrestle. And honestly, a lot of these guys that would be good wrestlers, like GSP has said before that Cowboy Cerrone has a really good double leg. But again, Cowboy Cerrone is one of those guys who's very anti-wrestling. He wants to stand up and strike. And again, that it's great for getting exciting fights. The fans love it. But as far as actual performance, it's probably not the best strategy. And I think that's where Usman is gonna take over and win. All he's got to do is take Masvidal down, hold him down, beat him up, take him against the fence, hold him on the fence, beat him up, stomp on his feet, do the calf kicks, wear him down, beat him up. And obviously Masvidal has KO power, so there is always a chance that Masvidal can knock him out. But I don't know if it'll happen. Masvidal, honestly, he wins most of his fights by decision. He's got a couple really, really good highlight knockouts, but he has won most of his fights by decision. So I think this will be another decision, most likely. Maybe a late round finish by Usman, but most likely I think Usman wins by a pretty dominant decision. Just kind of roughing Masvidal up and big brothering him because of, again, the lack of wrestling. And then Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman. I'll kind of do this one as a little bonus one, I guess, just because I'm actually really interested in this fight. It's not very often that I get interested in too many fights that aren't title fights anymore. I just don't really care too much, just because there's so many titles now that just watching the title fights alone. But Weidman versus Uriah Hall is one of the most interesting fights that is happening recently, just because it's a rematch of a really old fight. So I don't know if everyone's seen this. I assume most of you have, if you're a fight fan, if you're an MMA fan, because it obviously it was played a lot when Uriah first got brought into the UFC, and then when they were really trying to promote Chris, because everyone kind of knew Uriah as this badass from The Ultimate Fighter. So the fact that Weidman had beat him up looked really good. But yeah, they had a fight, both of them early on in their career, and it was pretty one-sided, and Weidman beat him up. The rematch will be interesting. Honestly, I'm gonna go with Weidman, but Hall does have a chance to stop him. If it stays on the feet, Hall will probably fuck him up. Hall is a very good striker, very powerful, very quick. His spinning back kicks, his wheel kicks, all that stuff. He barely telegraphs it. Those kicks all come out of nowhere. He's got a wide arsenal of kicks, question mark kicks, spinning back kicks, spinning hook kicks, turning side kicks, like any taekwondo or karate kick you can think of. Uriah Hall is really good at it and really good at doing it without telegraphing it. So Weidman is obviously going to want to take this fight to the ground and just beat him up because, Weidman's got that high-level wrestling background. And, yeah, I think that's going to be Weidman's game plan is go up there, or hopefully be Weidman's game plan is go out there, take him against the cage, bully him, take him down, smash him in the ground, maybe get a submission. Weidman's got really good jiu-jitsu. But, yeah, I think that'll be most likely, hopefully, what happens. Weidman's a smart guy. So he'll probably have the right strategy. But that being said, Uriah Hall is ridiculously quick, and he's clean with his striking, and he doesn't telegraph stuff. So there is a very good chance that Weidman gets caught. Even going for the takedown, something Masvidal Ben Askren style, where if he can time that knee or time a kick or time anything while Weidman's shooting on that leg, then that's twice as powerful because the guy basically headbutts as you're kicking. So, but yeah, that's who I think is going to win. I'm going to, Weidman for the Weidman Hall fight, Weili for the Namajunas fight, Weili Namajunas fight. I am rooting for Namajunas, but I think Weili's going to win. Shevchenko Andrade, I think Shevchenko is going to win. And then Usman Masvidal. Again, I think Usman's going to win. I don't really see how Masvidal has the technical skills to win an extended fight. He obviously has the power and could put him away, but again, if you look at his record, he usually goes to decision. Most of his wins are by decision. So, Usman by decision, Weili by probably TKO, ground and pound. Shevchenko by unanimous decision, and Chris Weidman by TKO, ground and pound.